Hello everyone, welcome to HRC Games. Today we're going to take a look at World War Z USA, designed by David Kershaw and published by White Dog Games. First off, and probably most importantly, I love that it's called Z. A little bit of background. I spent some of my youth living in Australia and I always found it fascinating how they pronounce Z's because it's always Z, and I just always kind of liked that they always called them zebras, which was pretty awesome. And now we've got a game called Zed, so it just kind of brings back some nostalgic memories. So I don't know if that colors my opinion of this game or not, but I think it's pretty cool. At any rate, this is a solitaire game that focuses obviously on zombies or whatever kind of maybe monsters you want to imagine the Zeds might be. And what happens is they pop up and they kind of start taking over the United States. And your job is to hold them back. And depending upon how many cities you can save, farms you can save, those types of things will determine how well you do in the game. So we're going to take a look at what's in the box, and we're also going to talk about my impressions of this game. So of course you get some rules. The rules are really well laid out, very, very simple. This is not a complex game. That's not a criticism by any stretch of the imagination. I'll show you some pictures as we talk here along. But the rules are very well laid out. It's pretty easy to pick this game up. You could probably read the rules, I don't know, in 45 minutes or so. There's only like 8 pages of them. There's only 8 pages of them. I wouldn't worry too much about understanding all of the rules as you play. This game works really well to kind of read the rules as you play because they'll kind of make more sense. And then the more you play the game, the more the rules will actually show their depth. So while the rulebook is pretty small and easy to digest, how to use certain components won't become really apparent until you play a few times. So like the value of a fort took a few playings for me to figure out, oh, this is where I should be placing it. This is what its function is. This is how it acts as a buffer. Or why you might want to place your Marines in the DZ zones. Those types of things. It's not that the rules are difficult to digest. It's just that they make more sense as you play the game. And you don't have to know all the rules to play, right? You can kind of walk yourself through it and then figure out why certain rules are written the way that they are. So good rule set, easy to digest, but it does take a little bit of time to kind of fully, I think, appreciate and understand the actual, the kind of the depth of the rules as they're written. Like I think sometimes you see games with 8 pages of rules, games got no depth. That's not the case here, right? Yes, it's simple to play. Yes, it's fast to play. However, to fully maximize your strategy, you kind of have to understand the rules. The rules kind of walk you through how to play the game, but the more you understand the rules and the more you play the game, you'll understand like the value of what a fort would do, or the value of the troop placements would do, or maybe you might want to move someone out of a zone before it makes sense to, right? So there's more depth to this game than what you might think just based upon the 8 pages of rules. But at its base, the rules are well written, pretty easy to understand. They have some good examples, so I don't think you'll find any trouble there. Second thing you get is the scenario books and some design notes. This is one of the, I think, the kind of the cool things about this game. There are a bunch of different scenarios that you can play throughout the game, and the cool thing that they've done here is that they've made some of the scenarios based upon movies, right? So you can kind of thematically play this game. So they have one for The Walking Dead, they have one for the game Plants vs. Zombies, War of the Worlds, Van Helsing, and kind of towards the front here, because I skipped a page, you have World War Z, or if we want to keep thematically, World War Z, Night of the Living Dead, 28 Days Later. All those things are pretty cool. They also have some additional historical setups, so you can play the game a little bit differently. So you could play it back in 1865, 1914, 1918, 1945, all those types of things. All that means is that there's different ways you can initially set up, and each of these little scenarios have a little bit different rules for each one, which provides for some really good replayability, which is also sometimes absent in some of these smaller games. So I think that's really a big bonus as well. So I love the scenario book. You can always just play the basic game, and every time you set it up, and that initial roll where you put the initial zombie outbreak at will change the nature of the game. So even if you don't want to play like the special scenarios, you're still going to get plenty of replayability out of just the basic game in and of itself. You also get a random region and events card. This is going to be used at the initial setup of the game for where you place the zombie outbreak, and then every turn you'll also use this to determine a random event. I like this because it makes every scenario a little bit different, and every turn you're not quite sure what's going to happen, which is probably true during a zombie outbreak as well. Like, you don't have a full handle on everything that's going on. That table tends to kind of introduce that flavor to those kinds of things. You also have a quick play card. Once you kind of understand the rules and you've read through them a couple times and you've played a few times, this is the only thing that you'll need. And even after a few plays after that, you probably won't even need this because the game runs that quickly and that well all by itself. You have some counters. I'll show you those on some pictures too, but they're nice and thick, easy to read. This is not, like I said, a very complex game. There's not a ton of information on each of the counters. So they're colorful, they're well done, they get the job done. And then, of course, you have the map. Not a huge map. That's okay. You don't need it to be huge. Easy to read. You kind of move around the map based upon dice rolls. So you have like a 1 and a 2 will determine where the zombie hordes move, those types of things. So the map works really good. It is a little on the thin side. I don't think that's a huge issue, right? Like, I've played, I don't know, probably 10, 15 games, and I don't have any wear on this yet at all. It's also small enough to where you could run it through a laminator. No problem at all, and it'll last you forever. So, yeah, great little map here. So what are my impressions about this game? So I've played it, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 times maybe, and I think it's a pretty awesome game. It's a smaller game. There's not a ton to it, right? So it's not like you're going to be spending months upon months trying to figure out how to play the game. This is a very quick play game. You can get through a whole scenario probably in less than an hour, depending on how things go. Like, you might get overrun and it's over in 30 minutes. You might get some good rolls and use some good strategy and actually get rid of all the zombies in 30 minutes. So, it kind of go both ways. The beauty, I think, in a game like this is that, yes, it's small, but that doesn't lack strategy. It doesn't lack fun. All right, this is a very light game, so you could, grab yourself a couple beers or beverages or whatever it is you want to do, roll some dice, move some zombies around, and see if New York survives, see if California gets overrun, see if you got a nuke somewhere. It's just a lot of fun, right? It's not a terribly deep game, but it is a terribly fun game, right? So it definitely has its place on your gaming table. Another thing about this game is that it's so small that if you're traveling around or you're out for business or whatever, easy game to take with you, good way to blow an hour, and get some relaxation time after your work is done, or if you just have 45 minutes to play, quick setup. You're not going to be racking your brain over rules for the entire hour that you're playing. I mean, it's literally like let's get it on the table, set up the initial scenario, run through the phases, and we're having a good time. So I think that the best thing about this game is that it's easy, and that it's quick, and that it's a lot of fun. It's really cool to see kind of where the zombies are gonna, go next, and destroying farms and destroying cities, and you have refugees pop up, and then they get killed and they become survivalists and all those types of things. It's just a ton of fun, right? It's a, like I said, very quick game, a lot of fun to play. Sometimes also in games like this that are on the smaller end of the scale, you have replayability issues. I don't think that that's going to be a problem with this game, right? You can play all those variations for the movies if you'd like. You can also play with different rules variations too. Sometimes you can have fast zombies, slow zombies. Like, there's lots of different ways that you can play this game that add depth to the game as well. Also, the fact that you never really know where the zombies are going to pop up at the beginning of the game, and you don't know what the random events are going to be, means that you're going to get a lot of mileage because each one of those games is a little bit different. There's an interesting section at the back of the rule book, or it might have been the designer notes, I forget which, where the designer, David, talks about how he likes to write out what happens each turn. So, like, the zombies appeared here, and then they moved here, and then this farm was taken, and this state was destroyed or whatever, and then in turn 2, the zombies then further moved here and there. I think that's kind of a cool thing, right? You can kind of almost create like a narrative of what happened in the game, and you could probably then go back and compare some of your games to see if there's themes, and just kind of see what had happened in your previous game. It's pretty neat. I really like the way that the zombies move, right? So at the beginning of every turn, you have a random event, and then you have first zombie phase, which is where if they're somewhere, they attack whatever's there, right? If there's nothing there, then they move. And then you have another zombie phase where wherever you have the most zombies, they move first, and then if they encounter something, they attack. And if they don't encounter something, like there's no city, there's no farm, or there's no survivalists or military there, then they move on to the next region. So you can actually get the zombies moving pretty far in a turn. So you can kind of really get that feel from a narrative or a story standpoint. Hey, look, it's really spreading and it's moving very quickly. So it's really kind of cool that way. It's also really neat how you have to use your forces. You got to be really kind of careful with where you're going to place them and how many you're going to get. You have a limited number of Marines. You have a limited number of National Guards, right? So you can't just be willy-nilly placing them everywhere and then having them die. You really got to think about placing them in the right spots so they get the advantages over the zombies when the zombies get there, or if you move in to get the zombies as well. So there's a little bit of depth here that I think that if you just looked at the box and the rules, you wouldn't think that were there. So the game's got a little bit more depth than what you might think, but it's not the kind of depth that would detract away from the speed of play or what you're looking for, which is kind of like a beer and pretzels kind of night or something like that. It's also, I think, a really good game that you could use to give to somebody else, right? Maybe even someone who's not a gamer, right? Because it's that easy to use. It's kind of a fun, light game. It might be able to draw them into it, so I think it's really good for those purposes. Another good thing you could use about this game is a holiday game. I could see people playing this on, Halloween or whenever you get a get-together and you just want to have some fun. That would be a great game for that as well. So it'll be interesting to see where they go next with this game. There's a lot of potential here for expansions, I think, into different countries, maybe different types of monsters, different situations. So that should be interesting to see where they go with this in the future. One last thing, I ordered a different game from White Dog Games, and when I opened the game, the counters were misaligned and miscut. Not a big deal. That happens, right? I mean, it's not within your control. So I sent them off just a quick email and said, hey, this is what happened. Can I get some replacement counters? Got a response almost immediately, sent me a new set of counters. No problem, no questions asked. So I say that not to point out that there was something wrong that was done. It's a compliment. I love it when companies respond to their customers and provide that good customer service. And White Dog Games certainly did that as well. So not necessarily related to this game, but if you're looking for companies that support their customers well and stand behind their products, my experience with them has been pretty good. So I highly recommend you pick this one up if you're in the mood to move some Zeds around and maybe try to save a few cities. And even though it's probably a sign of desperation, you do get to use nukes sometimes, and that's always cool. So don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll talk to you next time.